Good afternoon and welcome on the Sunset Safari. My name is Brent and Jamie's. I have Brian on camera with me today, and we have Tara and Andrew in FC, and Jess is joining us out and drive this afternoon. So if you guys on the Djuma cam picked up on an extra body on the back, she's getting a chance out of the office and come joining us on the drive. So for those of you who are new, we are live sitting right next to these elephants. Isn't that an amazing experience? We're also interactive, so you can ask us questions about what we see on drive, and you can do that by emailing us on questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. So it's really great to be back. James and I have been away for a bit. James is on the other vehicle with Vim, and I'm sure during the course of the drive we will definitely catch you up on what we were up to. And we managed to do about 460 kilometers each on motorcycles, so our backsides are a bit raw, and you're up to date with that. I think have a look at these eddies a little bit closer. So it's a balmy hopefully a really well, you can see the Djuma rooms behind. Wonderful to be back. Can spot batters calling, elephants dust bathing. We can just see her distinct shortened trunk there. It looks like the dust bath's over, and I think that it almost looks to be looking for small tubers in the grass. There we go. So those will hold quite a lot of nutrients and moisture. Just before I left last time, we actually saw a steenbok dig probably about 30 centimeters after that, and obviously for an elephant much easier, and they'll definitely look for bigger tubers and that, especially now at this time of the year where there is a bit of a shortage on food sources. So hanging around in the base of this drainage line, so there will be a little bit of remnant underground water, and you can see there's still a little bit of green in the grass there, so they're taking advantage of that at the moment. So from what I heard from Jamie, apparently this little breeding herd's been hanging around this waterhole quite a bit in the last few days, and it does become quite difficult for elephants at this time of the year. They do tend to lose a little bit of condition, and they do have to travel quite big distances between sustainable food sources and water. Now they're relaxed a bit, I'm going to edge a little bit closer, and those of you who might be new, it's very important to watch elephant behavior before you approach them too closely. Otherwise you can disturb them and potentially put us in a dangerous situation, obviously neither of which we want. And from their body language you can see they're quite relaxed. As we approach them, I've got a feeling that young female who's closest to us might react a little bit negatively. She might open up her ears. She's done that to me before when I've seen her. She tends to be a little bit less relaxed, but in these circumstances you need to watch the adult female and you judge the rest of the herd's behavior on her behavior, because she will be giving the signals whether they should attack or not. But let's go see a bit closer and see what we can see if they're see if we can see what they're feeding on. Also put the car into low range so the engine makes a lot less noise and we can really just inch up there. Also, you don't want to drive directly at the animals, you want to drive sort of straight across the face of them. Driving directly at a lot of animals, depending on how relaxed they are, can sometimes be taken as a sort of semi-aggressive stance. It's always important to keep your movements very slow and steady with elephants. Here we go, she's giving us a little head shake, but as you can see, the back is still completely fine. Here we go, kicking a little bit of sand at us, but she should calm down relatively quickly. It looks like she has more interested in finding those little bulbs that she seems to, all the ellies here seem to be feeding on. So those of you who own motor vehicles will know, generally if you have a dark car, it tends to get quite a lot hotter than a sort of a white car or light colored car. And that's where elephants are quite a strange thing, is that they're one of the only animals outside of us human beings that are able to operate at full capacity during the hottest days. And being a dark animal, one would think that would be sort of improbable because they're likely to overheat or whatnot. And their ears are the reason. They've developed this amazing cooling system, and they can have 8 liters, which is almost 2 gallons. For those of you in the northern hemisphere or the northern United States and Canada, they can have almost 2 gallons of blood in their ears, and that warm blood gets pumped into a huge vascular system that's in their ears, and when they flap it, it cools down and then sent back through the body. So that's how they're able to maintain and deal with this incredible heat. Obviously having a nice mud bath as well helps. You can see it thoroughly enjoyed the water. So all these elephants look in quite nice condition. There we can see after those bulbs. There's some of the sand. And then we can actually see that trunk a little bit more carefully there. And that's a testament to how incredibly strong and the survival instinct is in these animals, and the incredible injuries that I know she's been seen on the Wild Earth safaris for a while, but where or how long ago it happened that she might have lost that piece of her trunk, unfortunately I haven't heard any deeper information about it, but it probably was a very long time ago, judging from how it's healed. And I'm not sure whether a vet was called to intervene. Sometimes in these situations, the real bad damage is already done, and she would have pulled through pulled the snare off, and that piece of her trunk would have fallen off, and it would have naturally healed. But it would have been a very difficult time for her to feed. I mean, the trunk is such a vital part of an elephant. I mean, drinking, eating. It is amazing how they are able to survive such, what we would often consider such huge injuries. I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background. And that's a tiny little, one of my favorite birds out here. It's an African barred owl that we can hear calling.
Hello everybody, that was quite a fast changeover to us. It's lovely to be back. Just reattaching my earpiece and feeling slightly flustered at being so quickly thrown on camera. VM, how are you doing today? Okay? Yeah, okay, good, there we go. Now I'm calm, I'm alright. So on camera today we have Vyam. You are most welcome. My name is James Hendry, in case you have forgotten me, or in case you perhaps have joined us in the last 7 days. And if you are even more welcome than everyone else. Well, that's not true. Everyone's as welcome as each other. Let's not get any jealousy going around the welcomeness of everyone. We do love to hear from you. Questions at WildEarthTV if you're on the email, or hashtag Safari Live if you're on the tweet. I am driving around at the moment just about near where Brent was, around Gowrie Waterhole, and we're trying to find tracks of Kurula. Now Kurula, for those who don't know, is a female leopard, roughly 11 years of age, who I unfortunately called pug-faced at one stage and nearly caused Twitter to shut down. She is a beautiful leopard, make no mistake. She's just got a slightly shorter nose than some of the others I've seen. So we're driving around here and we're looking for tracks. Stefan found some very fresh tracks this morning, and they're apparently headed into this area. I haven't seen any hide nor hair of them yet, but there have been a whole lot of buffalo in the area, and so they may have stomped out the tracks. There are impala, warthog, nyala, various bits and pieces around the place. And so we'll drive along and see what we can have a look at. We've driven through here, we've turned around, we're going to come back around here and see if we can't pick up the tracks. Okay, welcome back to all of you, and I suppose to me. Thank you. Here we go. I must just tell you, Brent and I had a magnificent trip. We were up on the corner of Zimbabwe, Botswana and South Africa. And there is a huge amount of history in the area. There's a massive amount of wildlife, and there's also some of the most incredible vistas I have yet to see on this fine continent of ours. So I can well recommend a visit up there. Mashatu in Botswana, or the Greater Mapungubwe Transfrontier Conservation Area. Say that after a couple of snifters. And that's just on the sort of southwestern side of Zimbabwe, and then into northern South Africa, a little place called Mapungubwe, which is the site of a very sort of mysterious African civilization that existed there around 900 AD, and they were goldsmiths, very fine goldsmiths, and they traded, they think, as far east as the Chinese. They didn't travel there, but the Chinese, we think, came here. Certainly the Middle Easterns came here, and they found Chinese beads and various kinds of Middle Eastern artifacts around Mapungubwe, which is a beautiful site on the Limpopo River, just to the very northern side of South Africa. Right, so, hang on a second, Grumpy. There she is. She's come down this way. Alright, there are some tracks here of a female leopard. I think it's Karula. They're not very clear, so I'm not going to try and point them out to you on the camera and embarrass myself. We're going to send you back to Brent. He's apparently managed to fix his gremlins and the elephants, and I'm going to have a quick look here and I'll tell you about them when you come back. See you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry about that. It seems like there's a gremlin in this little drainage line in front of Djuma Vuyatela Lodge. But we are back, and we have a question from Mavis, specifically with this elephant who's got the stumpy trunk. And Mavis would like to know, why isn't she with a bigger breeding herd? Mavis, I've actually seen her as part of a bigger breeding herd of about 35 individuals, but most of the time I have seen her with these two slightly younger animals. And what happens, and specifically at this time of the year, that elephants do congregate in some of those bigger herds, but they also do split off. Obviously in a bigger herd it's a lot more difficult to find food and there's a lot more competition. But what happens is when you do see these very big herds, sometimes of 100 or so elephants together, that will be actually made up of a whole bunch of smaller family units that are most probably more than likely related, so sort of cousins, aunties, uncles, and they will join up from time to time and sort of have a catch up and a good chin wag, and then you'll often notice that quite often the smaller little family groups will then peel off from the larger group. And I think maybe because she does have this stumpy trunk, she will spend a little bit more time away from those bigger groups where there's less competition for food, and she's able to take her time a bit more with feeding. Things in bad condition. And then we can see how she's managed to learn to use that trunk, and that is quite a disadvantage. You can see she's not near that condition, also the hip bones. So you can see when the elephants start losing condition, you start to notice these sort of depressions in their skulls, and you don't really see ribs unless it's really towards the end, but their back hip bone will start showing. You'll have depressions around there, and you can see the skin looks very good there. She looks in very good condition, and we are at one of the driest times of the year, so I think she's doing just fine, and she's found a little niche to be able to survive. And I'm sure she will meet up, and we probably will see her with bigger breeding herds at some point in time. But I think for the moment her strategy is it's easier to feed while by herself and not having competition from the other animals. So these ellies are going to move further out in front of the lodge, and as far as I understand, there might be some people in the rooms down there, so we're not going to move too much further down here. We're going to make our way out. I'm going to see if I can get reacquainted with Djuma. Hopefully I won't get lost, but if I do, Brian's here to set me straight, so hopefully no getting lost today. Bye bye everythings. So Brian, do you remember the way it's bubbles look down?
Not quite.
So it is really nice and warm today, so I definitely think my game plan will be to check the various water points around Djuma, and I'm sure those of you who've been watching the Djuma cam will have seen that wonderful saddle-billed stork just down here, so we're going to visit the saddle-billed stork. So the saddle-billed storks we see around here or certainly a pair, even though we only see one, sometimes we only see one at a time, but they will sort of dominate the drying water holes in this area and utilize the different water holes as a pair or as individuals, but they are definitely a pair. Hi, Siba Sisu from Hammonds Crow. It's quite warm outside Pretoria today as well. I heard you're also sitting at around 30 degrees, so I'm sure you're enjoying the same sunny South African weather that we are here. So as we left those elephants next to that electric fence around the lodge, and that's obviously to keep the elephants and buffalo and other things out of the lodge and the guests safe, Sibo Siso would like to know if they ever get electrocuted by those fences. Or are they immune because of their thick skins? And is there any part of an elephant's body that's a bit softer? Well, so they do get shocked by them, but no means electrocuted. So with an electric fence like that, a game fence, they're normally at about 12. Sibo Seesaw would like to know if they ever get electrocuted by those fences, or are they immune because of their thick skins? And is there any part of an elephant's body that's a bit softer? Well, Sibo Seesaw, they do get shocked by them, but no means electrocuted. So with an electric fence like that, a game fence, they're normally at about 12,000 volts. So high amperage, and that would kill you. But you can have a high voltage or low amperage, so it gives them a fright. It definitely does give them a shock. And most of these elephants would have learned by testing those fences at some point in their life, and they would have got a wallop, and now they tend to stay away from them. And there are softer parts of an elephant's skin, sort of under their arms and that, but nothing that we would really consider really soft like our skin or whatnot. It's still very, very coarse and hard and grainy. There we go. So guys, we have the saddle-billed stork in front of us, and now let's wait for Brian to get it in a bit tighter. And I'm going to ask you, is this a male saddle-billed stork, or is it a female saddle-billed stork? Just to see that you guys, that Jamie and Steph have been keeping you guys up to date and checking on you. And is it a male or female saddle-billed stork? You can send your answers through to questions@WildEarthTV, or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. I think quite shortly the Djuma Dam is going to start looking very similar to what Twin Dams is, and very, very dry and very little water. I did see some catfish moving as we approached, and there's probably still some tilapia in here, and that's what the saddle-billed stork is taking advantage of. It's going to be much easier for them to catch frogs and fish in a drying up puddle than it is in a full dam. Then we can see a little bit of ripples in the water from the catfish to the left. Those look a bit big for that stork. Oh, there's a nice big group of Inyala coming in, right behind the stork. So as we get down to the cooler in the evening, the Inyala will start moving out of the thickets. I think they're probably coming to take advantage of that water hole that the Ellies were drinking at earlier. So let's move around and see if they come drink. Well, it doesn't look like we're moving very far without finding lots today. That's always a good way to start. I always love starting with elephants. So where James and I have just been in an area called the Tuli Conservation Area, where there were lots of elephants. We didn't see too many of them from our motorbikes. But the guys in the helicopter were running the safety over the cycle race. So there was actually a herd of about 300 on the first day on the Limpopo River, and James and I are quite glad we didn't see too many of them from our motorbikes. Elephants really don't like motorbikes. I'm not sure 100% why. I think it's probably something to do with the noise a bit. And I did get chased by one young bull on the third day of... Yes, the third day of riding through the bush. I was going on a long straight road through Mapani woodland, and I just heard this and this young bull running out to chase me. So we're going to just pop ourselves opposite and try to get on the right side of the sun so you guys might be able to get some really nice screenshots as these Inyala make their way down to drink. What do you think, Brian, around here? So they're still a little bit off, but Brian's going to show you now, they are moving down towards the water. But as always, animals could prove me completely wrong and walk straight past the water. And they have a different agenda to the one I think they do. You can see 4 females and 1 male there. And the squirrel in the foreground just in front. Oh, she's going to walk towards the squirrel now. Very carefully approaching, making sure there's no predators around. You can see her ears are out, fanning for any noises. She's probably testing the wind, looking out for Madame Karula. See how she's lifting her nose into the wind there, and very, very alert before approaching the waterhole. You can see they're all far more alert now. I think the male is more interested in the ladies, just judging from his behavior. There's another little boy with him there. It's amazing that complete color morph that the Inyala go through. So there's a young male, and you can see he still very much looks like mom, and it's starting to darken around the neck, and you can see his horns haven't even started to curl yet. And you notice how an animal like an Inyala approaches as opposed to how an animal like an elephant or a buffalo approach. So obviously Inyala, being smaller, far more cautious. They take their time as they approach the waterhole, whereas the elephants sort of stampede in with great excitement to the water, and so do big herds of buffalo. And one of my favorite sayings, patience is one of the most important things on safari. So we're definitely going to sit here. I'm quite confident they're going to come drink at this waterhole. It might take them a little bit longer to get here, but I definitely think it's worth the wait, especially as the light is getting better as we move later into the afternoon. You seem to be a little bit more happy now. They've had a good look around. And we are going to notice something, and I'm sure you guys who watch the Djuma cam regularly have noticed how the elephants often go for that top little corner where the water is pumped. So there's nice fresh water, cleaner water than the rest, and this little Nyala looks like it's going to do exactly the same. And you see, even approaching a small little bit of water like this, they're quite cautious, and we're looking around in case there might be other predators or even a crocodile. Even a small little pan like this can hold a crocodile. You can see how she lifted her head quickly there, just in case there was something around. You watch sounds from all different directions. So Inyala are non-territorial animals. They will stay in sort of home ranges, but they're very loose, and you'll often find mixed groups of males and females and multiple males together. You can see, there we go. That's why I said I think he's more interested in the ladies. Oh, off she goes. And I think that was him harassing her that got her to run away. There we go, off they head off, back to the thickets along the drainage line. Don't think she's quite an estrus yet, and definitely not too interested in the invitations from the male. But she probably is coming towards estrus, and that's why he's hanging around, and we'll be following her quite extensively. Anyway, now let's go and try and move away and see what else we can find. We haven't gone very far at all yet to the sunset safari, but isn't that wonderful? There's so much happening, and there's always wonderful things to look out here in the African bush. I'm just going to get a hold of James on the radio. And see what else he's been up to. But we're going to cross across to James, who is also at a hydration point, and we'll be back with you a little later, hopefully. We're going to see what we can find in the sort of north and east of the reserve, and have some fun with James. I'm sure he's got lots to tell you, and we've both got a lot to catch up on, but we'll see you later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where I bring you the news that I'm afraid we have not found the delightful Karula just yet. But what we have found is something akin to the bush version of a monastery for old men. Here are a number of buffalo bulls, lots of them, and they seem to be lurking about here in the dust, lying in their own detritus, and also being attacked by probably 1 billion flies. It's very hot today, and they are lurking around the water here, probably because they've denuded the other water hole, and you'll find now that competition is going to start to increase substantially. So while you've had elephants at the other water hole, which is where Brent is, and that's, as the crow flies, probably about at 150 meters, you'll find that as the competition increases, things like elephants will start to dominate waterholes like that. So the buffalo will move over, they'll be forced to move around a bit. So these guys are lying around here. This is not their preferred sort of place because there's no mud for them, and they do like the mud when it gets hot like this. Ooh, really lovely query from Dennis in Massachusetts. And Dennis, thank you for your kind welcoming of me back. I see that no one yet on the Twitterverse has noticed my spanky new shirt, which is quite insulting. I'm a bit sad about that. Anyway, Dennis, your question is an excellent one, and I'm not sure I have the answer. Dennis wants to know, why is it that there are so many flies on the lions and the buffalo when the elephants seem to be relatively free of them? Dennis, the same goes for rhino. You know, they're all over rhino as well. And I don't think it's a coincidence that oxpeckers are on all of the animals you've mentioned, except lions, of course, which would eat oxpeckers, and not on elephants, which also seem to be free of the scourge of flies that are around the place. Dennis, I think it's probably got something to do with elephants not tolerating them. Elephants, if you watch them carefully, they're very seldom still, like these buffalo are for any length of time. And so every time a buffalo moves, you see this cloud of flies leap off them. Same with a rhino. Elephants, I think, move a bit more. I also think they do things like throw dust on themselves quite a lot, which tends probably to chase the flies off. So yeah, Dennis, I think those are probably the reasons. But remember also, Dennis, that the elephants they won't tolerate oxpeckers either. So while they do get ticks on them, I don't think nearly as many as some of the other animals like rhino and buffalo. They will not tolerate oxpeckers, and we're not really sure why that is. I don't think they're nearly as affected by ectoparasites as things like elephants are, though, at least as things like buffalo and rhino are, because their skins are just so incredibly thick. It's a very nice question. So a huge group of bulls, and I've never seen groups of bulls like I have here at Djuma. I'm not sure why we don't see as many breeding herds. There are at least 2 breeding herds that live south and to the north of here, and they just don't seem to come through here very often. I mean, every so often we've seen the Nkuhuma Pride killing out of a buffalo herd here before, but we don't see them very often. And it's not because there isn't water here. I mean, there's fairly large amount of water. Now, I believe you have had a few sightings of the breeding herd in the last week. Okay, so maybe as the water dries up in some of the other areas, they'll come through here more often. So this old monastery of bulls, you can see some of them much older than others. There's that one with half a horn there. Can you see him? That's it. There he is. So you've got everything from that age. He's probably pushing 25. All the way down to, well, there look like a couple of them that could be sort of almost in their prime. That one in the center of your picture there now has got a very good boss on his head, and he looks like he's got a great set of horns on him, and so I'd say he's probably not much older than maybe 18. I am guessing, but I think he's a bit younger than the others. It just goes to show that the fittest bulls are probably less than 18, probably sort of 14 or 15 years, and after that their condition probably starts to decline steadily, and it becomes more of an effort to fight for the attentions of the beautiful buffalo ladies that tend to move around in the breeding herds, and so they come and form these sort of old boys clubs where they can tell each other stories of their days of glory and lie in the mud and their own detritus, of course. Lovely picture of the dust rising up off them, and that's going to be an increasing sight as we go into the driest parts of the season. Where Brent and I were recently, were almost at least just as dry as this, if not drier in some places, and apparently the place where we were in Botswana, which is called the Tuli block, apparently Tuli does have some kind of meaning to do with dust in the Tswana language, or one of the local languages there, and it certainly was extremely dusty, even more dusty than this is. So tough times out for the animals and the wildlife of this area for the next few months. And like I've said before, we're expecting a dry year, and so probably quite tough all the way into December. Right, so we drove all the way around here trying to see if we could find anything in the way of tracks of Karula. She did come into the sort of drainage line area. I'm not sure if any of you saw it, but a little while back Brent managed to catch her in a tree just not far from here, and Mvula stole the kill from her, which was extremely unchivalrous of him, but he did do that, and that wasn't far from where we are sitting right now. But her tracks haven't come out anywhere, and she does a few different things, which is quite interesting. She goes through the camps, and so we wouldn't pick her tracks up there, and she also does things like she moves in the middle of the day. It looks to me like she's been moving around in the middle of the day, which is, I mean, it's not totally unusual for a leopard, but she seems to do it more than most. So I think we're going to stay around this area today and see if she doesn't pop out. I think monkeys are going to be our best bet. Alarm calling monkeys, probably. But we'll see. Nothing's shouting right now. And thank you, Sandy, for your very kind welcome back, and your admonishment to not mess with Karula. I certainly shan't, Sandy. Fear not. I learnt my lesson the first time round. Vian said to me the other day when we were trying to track her, he said, you know, she can fly, or something to that. What did you say? I think you said she can fly, or she's like a ghost or something like that.
She can fly.
She can fly.
Firefly.
There we go. So her tracks tend to come in and disappear, and she's walking around and around the place as opposed to sort of territorial marking. So I think she's probably looking for something to eat. I believe she was seen yesterday looking quite hungry. Now, of course, what we must remember while we look at these buffalo is that they are Viam's least favorite animal, and so he's having a tough time filming them, and I'm not sure why he has this bias against them. I think they're quite magnificent beasts. Viam, would you like to offer an explanation? No, he's just looking at me with daggers, so I think he's not going to offer any kind of explanation at all. It is about 30 degrees, probably a bit hotter than that even, and so it's quite hot for her to be moving around right now. And what's always amazed me about these buffalo is that despite the heat, they will, and their color, I mean they're black, they will lie in the sun like this and somehow not overheat. Anyway, I think we're probably going to press on from the buffalo and just drive very slowly around this area and just see if we can't pick up some sign, birds alarm calling, squirrels alarm calling, perhaps monkeys. So often we found leopard around the camp here because of the monkeys that tend to hang around the safety of the camp, and they alarm call and we come and we find a leopard. Also, please keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cam. Just keep an eye there. She might pop down for a drink. 3 or 4 times we've got updates from you guys who are watching the dam cameras. Keep an eye out there. Right, we're going to move slowly along and just keep an eye out. There were some nyala and some impala and a couple of warthogs around, so let's see if she hasn't managed to try and snaffle them from her afternoon tea. Alright, Vian, thank you very much for agreeing to film the buffalo for me. Obviously gratitude. Chap really is not in a good state. Let's just have a quick look at him if you don't mind. Just gives you an idea of that one that you've got in the middle of your picture there. The kind of idea of the condition they get into. Their hair starts to fall out, their hips start to stick out a bit, their horns become much less impressive, but somehow they go on, and I suspect that's because they're so difficult to kill. I was hearing a story the other day, in fact a few days ago, of a buffalo kill and it took a pride of lions 2 hours to eventually take down one of these old buffalo bulls. So they've got plenty of fight left in them, despite their slightly morose look. He's got quite a nice Roman nose, does that fellow? Look at that, Viam. Look at the action going on. How can you not like buffalo?
What that?
Alright. Let's move gently along and see what else we can find. Christina from Pennsylvania, you did a little trip out west to Colorado, I think it was. I have been to Colorado, believe it or not. One travels when one is in search of love, of course. And you apparently weren't know, well, does the buffalo dung do the same thing? Yes, it does. In some cases, and especially elephant dung. And Stefan, who's been driving Wendy, I'm not sure if he showed you this, but he's got a contraption. I will try and detach it a bit later. A contraption of tin that he has been burning elephant dung in to ward off the flies. He swears blind it works. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. I may well try it later. Vian just looks slightly less healthy than he did before, so I suspect it's probably just given him a slighter bout of pneumonia or bronchitis. And blow me down, shiver me timbers, and call me nincompoop. Bob, the Bachelor of Buffels Hook, appears to be back, and not only does he appear to be back, he appears to have some friends with him. We're going to go straight across to Brent, and so he can tell you about Bob and his two new best friends. See you just now.
Welcome back everyone. Here we are at Buffels Hook Waterhole with Bachelor Bob and some hitchhikers. I'm busy trying to figure out what the hitchhikers are at the moment. And one closest to us, one on the right, on your what would be your right, or my left, looks like a hinged terrapin. The other one behind him looks like it might not be. I'm just trying to double check, but no, it is a hinged terrapin. I thought it might be a marsh terrapin for a second, but they are both the hinged terrapins. And we have 5 species. This is the, remember, serrated hinge terrapin. It's the biggest terrapin of the hinged terrapin species, but hinged terrapins and marsh terrapins, and quite often seen utilizing hippos as basket, vulnerable to predation. There's very little that is going to take on a hippopotamus for a terrapin meal. What you got there, Brian?
It was a terrapin.
It was a terrapin. A terrapin not on Bob. Let's have a quick look at that. It definitely looks like Bachelor Bob. But other than that, quite quiet here at Buffels Hook. Alright, here we go. Definitely seen both terrapin species since I've been here at Djuma. see, not a cloud in the sky, and you can see that layer of dust and smoke that we get at this time of the year between the blue and the horizon. It's what makes for some of these incredible sunsets we get here, is the light reflecting off that layer of dust and smoke. So quite often very big cities all over the world also have that for a slightly different reason. They have it from industrial smog. Johannesburg has got particularly nice sunsets because of all the factories and cars. Fortunately, we have it because of the dust and the smoke, which is a little bit better than having it from factories. And there we go. So we can see that the two different terrapin species. I will definitely try, as it gets dry and dry, show you guys a bit closer. So there you go, that's the marsh terrapin. And they're very, very widespread through southern Africa. And they're literally almost everywhere except for the most arid and most cold parts. And then there's a little serrated hinged terrapin. And they are able, while they're called hinged terrapins, they'll put their heads in sideways, into their shell, and then the bottom little piece of their shell is able to close up. So really, really interesting species. You also have some hinged tortoise species that are able to do that as well. And we do have one of them here, and that's Speaks hinged tortoise. And for those of you who are followers of African history and geography, Burton and the Mountains of the Moon, or one of the Nile River, and they were great adventurers that traveled the vast hinterland of Africa many, many years ago, and were cartographers as well as sort of amateur scientists and zoologists. But we must remember, very different in those days. How you named something is you generally took a shotgun and shot it and then tried to figure it out what it was. Fortunately, we've evolved a little bit since then, and we try to catch them without hurting them to figure out what it was. I actually read a very interesting article on my trip down here today that something that doesn't happen too often in the mammal world is there was a new species of monkey discovered in the Amazon, a titi monkey, a T-I-T-I monkey, and it's probably one of the first major mammal species in the last while. The last one was a red colobus from the Congo. So very interesting, 2 new primates that have been discovered in the last 5-6 years. Very interesting. That doesn't happen very often. But we're going to move on. All is quiet on the Buffalo's Hook front. I'm about to go down through a big dip, so there might be a little bit of signal breakup, but I will move through as fast as possible. Okay, we're just going to cross through the dip. Hold on! Whee! Okay, so back to the stork quiz, and asked you whether it was a male or female saddle-billed stork, and it was a male, and it was Matthew and Deborah who got that correct, as well as many, many others. So well done to all of you. And I'm going to show you why it was a male. 2 seconds. Let me just get to the bottom of my book box. I can't help myself. I have to take every book just in case there's something we can look at, and I can't leave any behind. So what's quite nice about a lot of the books, and as they've got newer, they didn't used to have something like this. So in the front of this book, you've got a nice little family to work it out, and how isn't lucky that is the saddle-billed stork is the family. So it makes it a lot easier and quicker to utilize the book. Obviously with birding, sometimes you don't get the longest possible time to have a look at the bird before it flits off. So this is just to help with the speedy finding of the birds in the book. So there we go, storks. So we can't actually see here. not the best picture, but the male has a red eye and the female has a yellow eye, and also the male, which isn't actually pictured here, has very distinct wattles that hang off the bottom of the beak, but the females aren't as distinct. But obviously they haven't pictured the male fully here. This book is my favorite, although a lot of it's a bit big for this area, but it covers birds in the whole of Africa, South Africa. I've been using it quite extensively, so a lot of the books for this part of the world wouldn't cover where I was in Zambia recently, so always good to, I like to keep that with me. So while we continue to traverse the eastern sectors of Djuma Private Game Reserve, we're going to cross back to Commander Bond, who's with some striped donkeys.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we have found a zebra or two. There are actually two of them, and I think they're coming down to the water hole to drink. It's been a very hot day, like I said, and it's so seldom that zebra actually come towards us, and these are some of my favorite animals. I was a big fan of horses as a kid, and so stripy ones out here are just magnificent, especially when they're being confiding like this young fellow is. Fellow here? No. Lady. Beautiful. Gee, that's a really nice picture. We don't often get them this sort of close and happy to be around us. There's another one coming. So before I move, we'll wait for him or her. You can so clearly see there the difference in their stripes. And people will often say to you, you know, zebras have all unique stripes. Isn't that amazing? I think it would be far more amazing if they had the same stripes. That's quite an old mare. You can see she's just a bit bony. She's got a very interesting stripe pattern. She's an oldish mare. Let's go down to the water and see if we can't get them having a bit of a drink. And I did get an update on Karula's tracks, and Lee, who I'm sure we've spoken about before, who operates a sort of training school around the place, said that they did cross off towards quarantine clearing, which is away from here. So we'll head that way. He didn't find her, so we'll head that way a little bit later. But let's go up onto the wall here and see if the zebra don't come down to drink. In fact, we'll go down below the wall. Everything's thirsty, including me, Djuma. What did you bring me to drink?
Banana peel water.
Banana peel water, thank you. There you go, away for a week, and expect everybody to welcome you back with gifts of, I don't know, all sorts of nice things. Banana peel water. Thanks, Djuma.
Actually very nice.
Is it? We're just going to stop here. I don't want to drive around too close to them. That said, if they do come down the other side, we won't see them. Let's just drive around here, and we'll wait and see for a while if they come. And if they don't, we'll head back towards quarantine clearings. Lots of catfish activity, and as some of you know, I have failed. I'm a dismal catfish catcher. To try. There's also a beautiful saddle-billed stork, who seems to have lost her partner yet again. Here comes the zebra. I'm sure they'll come down, but we'll just wait here for a little while. And I believe Brent did do a quiz on the gender of that stork, so you all know what it is. But what's interesting to me is that she seems to be on her so that's a he. So that's very interesting. So the last time the stork was on its own here, it was definitely the female. And they are monogamous pairs. And so I'm quite fascinated that the other one isn't here. Maybe she's gone off to Twin Dam. No, Viam says Twin Dam is totally dry now. Maybe Treehouse Dam, and maybe she's doing some fishing there. I suspect also that most of these sort of edible-sized tilapia have been eaten out of this water, and they're now probably catfish that are just probably easy to catch, but they're so big come this sort of time of the year and this stage of the water that stalk is not going to do a huge amount of eating of those huge fish. Zebra are So just while we wait for the zebra, which are just behind me over there, Lisa, nice question about, you've noticed how much more to know, to smell, there's sort of a muddy stink around the rotting buffalo dung and different other kinds of fish detritus perhaps that's in the water. Yes, it does a little bit, not very strongly though. I think because it dries so quickly, not much really gets a chance to rot, I think. But Buffelshoek is so much deeper because it's excavated, so it's got a much bigger wall than this, and so it doesn't seem to be fed by a much bigger drainage line, but it definitely holds a lot more water, and it's a lot deeper in the middle than this ever gets. There's the zebra, Viam. Can you see them? The view, Viam, you frightened them away. Right, so Cam's Water, where we've spent quite a long time already, and we'll head back around towards quarantine clearings and see if we can't pick up feeling about this place. We'll pop down here a bit later in the evening. There are the elephants that Brent saw. We shan't tarry, but I'll just have they are. Looking for the scenery, perhaps a bit of cleaner vegetation, a bit of things to eat, I suppose. Lovely light there, just as the light starts to soften today. The other thing I noticed, speaking of sort of softening and that colour, that sort of yellowish colour, which is of sort of like a gentle creamed honey colour, is the knobthorns. The knobthorns have started to flower, and they smell amazing. And they've got this sort of gentle patches of, they look like little balls of creamed honey on the end of the leaf, of the end of the branches. Just a beautiful smell this time of the year, and the first hint of the new season. Well, here come the zebra, Viam. Now don't frighten them away again. I just spotted the elephants. Decided they're not that terrifying. She's going to brave Viam and I, rather. Two mammal species in the same picture. In fact, there were three for 1 second. There is a nyala that you can maybe just see. There we've got 3 species briefly. Beautiful. Look at that. She's a stunning zebra, that. I think this is a younger mare. The other one that we saw seems to be, to me, much older than this one. She's just sniffing the air, listening carefully to what we're saying. Obviously not the words, necessarily. Here comes the other one as well. Now, it's so interesting, they don't like people much. They're quite nervous. And clearly, our presence here is not frightening enough to overcome the thirst. It's actually a young stallion. That's not a mare. That's a mare. The other one is a young stallion. I think they're going up to the cleaner water. Very aware, sniffing all the time. This is so nice. We seldom spend this sort of time with zebra. They will, of course, what they're doing, they're sniffing this old elephant dung that's on the ground. And sometimes they will eat it if it's, I don't know when, but zebra will also eat their own dung in difficult times. It's a process called coprophagy. Pretty foul, if you ask me, but some animals, some herbivores do it. And horses do it as well, especially if they're trying to reline their guts with the bacteria that help them to digest the cellulose. Young stallion smelling all the time. And superbly designed fly swatter on his backside is constant work. Look at them both swishing. I'm just going to try and sneak round. Just try not to let them run off. Very lovely, peaceful afternoon this. Lovely to be back in the low veld after the northern reaches of South Africa. Ah, look, drinking again. Apparently you had quite a long discussion this morning with Jamie about the hiccuping of zebra, and you didn't come to any conclusion. I've spent an extensive time with horses, and as far as I know, no horse I was ever privileged to ride hiccuped. They do cough, and their coughs do sometimes sound like hiccups, but I'm not sure where the discussion came from, or if there is in fact some kind of conclusive proof either way that zebra hiccup. As far as I understand it, a hiccup is a sort of spasm in the diaphragm. I'm not sure that zebras have them. very thirsty. And just quite interestingly, while you're looking at that animal sucking up water, something that I certainly, when I first heard this, was amazed by it, but it's so obvious when you know, and that is the function of lips. If you don't have lips, you can't do what these zebras are doing now. See that, Viam? It is impossible to make any kind of suction or any kind of sort of airtight or vacuum in the mouth, and so it's almost impossible to drink like that. Well, you can't drink like that. It's one of the major functions of having lips that close and seal off the mouth. They're really nice and towel Franklin there. Oh no, going away. Never mind. Right, well, let us leave these zebras to their drinks, and I think we'll head back towards quarantine clearings and see if we can't pick up on Karula's tracks again. And then while we're driving, there is a young stallion here and a mare, and the one just in front of your screen there is in fact, I don't know, could the youngster be her son, or is he her lover perhaps? Robin, most likely her son, but not impossible that they could have hooked up in a romantic sense. Age is not, they're not very ageist zebras, and obviously the mares will breed basically until they die, and so it would be very advantageous to both of them if they happen to find themselves alone and without romantic partners. It would be very advantageous for both of them to hook up, and so maybe that's what's happened. I don't know. She looks like she might be pregnant, you know, so maybe they have created a small partnership. A small kinship group is what they call. And as we've left that lonely stork, who's a little bit like the Bachelor of Biffle's Hook in that he's on his own, Kathleen, you want to know where they make their nests. Storks make their nests in trees, sticks, sort of uncomfortable stick nests, a bit like the most obvious sort of example would be like an eagle's nest. I'm sure you can imagine an eagle's nest, a sort of uncomfortable platform of sticks. All of them except something called a black stork, which is has nests. The rest of them were in trees. I've always been some birds' nests you would really like to spend some time in. They look really comfortable, especially the nest of something like the grey penduline tit, which is a tiny little bird like that, and they make a nest of hair. They get they take cotton. They take wild cotton from a plant called Gossypium herbaceum, and they take that, and they take various other bits, probably a few feathers and fibers, and they make this sort of, it looks like a cocoon, and it's got a special false entrance to stop snakes going in and eating the babies. It's a remarkable construction. I mean, when we find them, they really are very special. And if you were a young bird, that's where you'd want to grow up. And then you look at something like a white-backed vulture's nest, which is a great big pile of untidy and uncomfortable thorny knobthorn sticks, and you think, good grief, how horrible it must be to be born in that, naked, with no covering at all, and being expected to survive. They breed them tough as vultures. So Karula went through basically from behind us, and then down through past. There's a little site where one of her sons was once found, a sort of dinner site on a concrete plinth, where one of her sons was once found reclining. Do you remember that, Bjorn?
Scott and Brian?
Scott and Brian, with quarantine, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, long ago. And the leopard was resting on the top of the plinth, and that's basically where she's gone. So we're going to go down and check towards the drainage line that runs away from here. We may be lucky, we may not. But it is a magnificent afternoon just to be out here. And while all the people that Brent and I were working with have headed back to the big smoke of Johannesburg, which at this time of the year is really not too bad, they're all going into their offices today, and Brent and I, they were asking where were Brent and I going, and we said, well, we're going back to work. And they said, well, where's that? And we said, well, it's in the middle of the Kruger National Park. And their faces almost universally turned green with envy as they thought about their days in the office today. Sorry if you happen to be in an office, but if you are in an office, remember that there's nothing wrong with having this Wild Earth production showing just in the little bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Alternatively, if you're in an office of your own and not a cubicle, you should probably have it projected onto the wall in life size. Bumpy. Let me try that starling. It's going to get a little... No? Too far, is it? It was a greater blue-eared glossy starling, everybody. We'll just have a quick look. Totally nondescript at this angle with this light. Well, there you go. You can see he's blue, and you can see a slight yellow tinge of his eye. And remember, there are two species of starling that look almost identical to that one. The one is that one, the greater, the Cape glossy starling. The other is the greater blue-eared glossy starling. And that one is a Cape glossy. I know that only from his call that he made as he flew off. He went... Did you hear that, Ben? Did you hear him saying...
No, I wasn't listening.
No, you weren't listening. See, that's the problem with these chaps. And that is how I knew he was a Cape glossy starling, because they look almost identical to the greater blue-eared starling, which goes blue when he calls. That's how I remember the difference. It doesn't actually sound like that, but to my mind it does. Right. There we go. Thank you, Björn. And while we're driving along here, thinking about, and I made a few comparisons between horses and zebras. Crystal, in California, you're obviously a horsewoman, and you want to know, do zebras suffer from colic? Now, it's actually a question we've had a few times, and it's a good one. And the answer is I don't know for sure. But I don't think it's nearly as bad as it would be in domestic horses. And the reason for that is that, firstly, they only eat roughage here, so they don't ever eat concentrate foods or grains, which they haven't actually evolved to do. So when we feed our horses grains like corn or wheat or barley or oats, remember that they haven't actually evolved to eat that stuff. They've roughage, a major cause of domestic horse colic. And obviously zebras don't struggle from that. And then the other thing that makes all domestic animals more susceptible to diseases and maladies is overbreeding. So zebras, much like sort of wild cats versus domestic cats, or wild dogs versus domestic dogs, they don't suffer from the same number of diseases. They tend to live a lot longer as well. What is that? It's a little diker. No, it's diking away. Sorry about that, running away. So, you know, like most domestic animals versus wild animals, definitely suffer from some diseases that are the same, but certainly less so than domestic horses. So I don't think zebras suffer from colic. I'm sure they had the mechanism to suffer from colic if they eat something silly, but I don't think it's a major killer of zebra at all. Thanks, Crystal. I'm always fascinated by the comparison with domestic animals. Firstly, because it is a link between humans and animals, and secondly, because it's so interesting to see how we have related to the wilderness and how animals have helped us to do that. So Karula, the deer girl, was heading towards this area. One advantage of not having too much rain around at the moment is, of course, that the roads remain